Deluxe editions and pre-order bonuses are already pretty controversial. Generally, it involves a company saying they'll give you a little something extra for a few more of your dollars, or your faith that the game is going to be good before it's actually come out. That said, not all these something extras are made equal. Sometimes these are cosmetic add-ons, sometimes they're entire maps or armor sets, and sometimes they're an extra that is so fundamental to the game that it provides a totally different experience for those who have it versus those who don't. In this list, we'll be digging into a bunch of deluxe edition and pre-order bonuses that for one reason or another kinda wrecked the game underneath. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 9 video game deluxe editions that broke everything. Number 9. Griffey, Ni no Kuni. One of the especially weird things about video game pre-orders is that sometimes you'll get different bonuses depending on the retailer you decide to pre-order from. This was the case with Ni no Kuni, where if you ordered from Amazon, you could get Griffey. This would be all well and good for a JRPG like this one, replete with hundreds of familiars, of which Griffey is one, all set to march into battle for you. But our Griffin buddy happens to be intensely overpowered, as in game-breakingly overpowered. It's only once you get to the real pointy end of the game that you'll even think about subbing him out, since by then you'll have found better familiars, but until that point, none of your other familiars will compare to his stats. Reportedly, people keen to get their hands on him were paying as much as $50 to anybody who had a code for him. Now I gotta touch on something here which is relevant to this entry and more entries on this list, which is the argument that if something's OP, just don't use it. Now of course that's a totally viable approach, but we're talking about the fact that these bonuses are game-breakingly OP if you do use them. If you don't want to use them, you're all good. End PSA. Number 8. Save Scumming, the QUARRY. The latest blockbuster brainchild from Until Dawn developer Supermassive was a big hit with reviewers in particular, though it might be because those reviewers were given the special edition, which includes 3 mulligans if you happen to get one of your characters killed. Much like Until Dawn, the QUARRY has a teen horror movie setup where you'll need to make a lot of choices correctly in order to try and keep your ragtag group of youths alive. While Until Dawn had no implemented save scumming system, it had pretty loose checkpointing, so if you really wanted to and you just mess something up, you could just quit out of the game, load it back in, and redo that thing, if that's something you want to do. Supermassive have ensured this isn't possible in the QUARRY, as the game saves immediately as you make a life or death choice, but that doesn't mean save scumming is completely out of the game. They just charge for it now. In Australia, the QUARRY is already a $90 game, and if you want the version that comes with the rewind system, essentially granting you 3 extra lives for any mistakes you make, you'll need to pay another $20 on top of that, making this a $110 game that'll only take you about 10 hours for one playthrough. The problem here is that the true ending hinges on the survival of a few select characters, so not having a do-over if you mess up one thing has a huge impact on your experience. You can earn the Death Rewind feature after going through the game once, but that's a big time commitment, especially for a game that won't let you skip cutscenes the second time through. If you're keen for multiple playthroughs anyway, this won't be a problem for you, but for everybody else, it's a vastly different experience and it feels kinda scummy on the business practices side. Number 7. The game-breaking pre-order ship, No Man's Sky. You probably noticed in this list when we talk about something that broke everything, we're generally talking about things being overpowered and messing up the difficulty curve and stuff like that. Not in this entry though. In this entry, it was a ship that actually broke No Man's Sky. Hesitant as I am to continue dumping on No Man's Sky, this was such an oversight we can't ignore it. Cast your mind back to 2016 and you might remember sitting down with No Man's Sky for the first time and taking on the beginning challenges that involve obtaining a blueprint for a hyperdrive to warp your ship around and building new warp cells to charge said hyperdrive. It's the early game gating system designed to teach you the space travel fundamentals, and it's pretty important. Of course, you'd have been forgiven for missing out on that entirely if you got the Alpha Vector ship with your pre-order that already has a hyperdrive, meaning you could have just ignored picking up the hyperdrive or antimatter blueprints, thereby actually preventing you from moving forward in the game. Poor No Man's Sky, as if it needed even more things that complicated its launch. Oh well, let's just focus on the fact that apparently, by all accounts, it's a much better game now. Number 6. The Bouncer, Ratchet & Clank, 2016. Insomniac's Ratchet & Clank series has quite the legacy, and the PS4 edition was no exception to the history of bright visuals, exciting gameplay, and delightful characters that fans expected. They'd also have expected the suite of weaponry, and one particular pre-order weapon turned out to be especially overpowered. The bouncer has appeared in multiple Ratchet and Clank games, but it's only been a pre-order bonus exclusive for the version on PS4. You can grab it early in the game for 100 bolts, so long as you snagged a pre-order code, but doing so is really worth it if you want to absolutely breeze through the game. For 130,000 bolts, you can upgrade it to the Omega Heavy Bouncer, and to put it plainly, this thing can clear a room with just a couple of shots. In essence, that means making the incredible souped up weapon that has bombs for bullets hit even harder and with a greater area of effect. This is either the most amazing thing and something you'll have a ton of fun with, or it wrecks the game, depending on your perspective. Number 5, the Fox Blade, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. 2013 action game Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance changed up the Metal Gear formula in a way most people found to be pretty refreshing. But for the people who bought the GameStop pre-order, things were about to get a whole lot easier. The retailer offered up the grey fox skin, which is pretty snazzy, and a 24-page art book, which is great if you like that kind of thing, but the game-breaking thing was the Fox Blade. This weapon has the same stats as the HF blade, but it ignores armor. Its single special upgrade increases the chance of ignoring armor to 100%. In short, once upgraded, this thing slices and dices like nothing else. It's a ton of fun to use, but you'll quickly notice the difficulty curve has been completely flattened. If you love using OP weapons, you'll have no problem at all with this one, but if you wanted to play the game as intended, this is not the weapon to equip. Number 4. Vault 13 Canteen, Fallout New Vegas. Like many of the entries on this list, while this one can now be acquired by purchasing DLC, it was originally only available to those who got it alongside their pre-order. Specifically, the Vault 13 Canteen came as part of the Classic Pack, which also included the ARMOUR Vault 13 suit and the weathered 10mm pistol. But the Vault 13 Canteen was so OP, it sort of undermined the game's hardcore mode. In hardcore mode, you'll have to battle with a bunch of survival aspects, including the fact that healing items take time to take effect, and you'll also have to do things like sleep, eat, and stay hydrated in order to not die. Undercutting the whole hardcore part of hardcore mode is the Vault 13 Canteen, which your character will automatically sip from every 5 minutes to counter dehydration, and it can never empty. It also restores 15 hit points whenever you take a sip from it. So 2 of the biggest things that can become an issue in the game's hardest mode are no longer a problem. Much like the other OP items in this list, you'll probably find this one to be a huge relief or a gigantic cheat. Either way, I think we can agree it sort of messes with the game's hardcore mode. Number 3, Blood Dragon Armor, Dragon Age Origins. BioWare loves its add-ons and DLC, and this ridiculously OP armor set for Dragon Age Origins is no exception. Those who picked up the Ultimate Edition of the game, or a new copy of the Origins Standard or Collector's Edition, would be granted with this armor early on. But for RPG fans, you'll notice quickly it really throws off gear progression. Not only does the game gift it to you immediately, you'll be hard-pressed to get anything else later in the game that'll make you want to swap it out. It requires 38 strength to wear, so you can't don it right out of the gate, but the stats are super impressive, especially once you can complete the set by buying the other pieces at the party camp. If you do don the whole set, then you'll be able to get the set bonuses, which have a +3 to your armor and a +1 to your defense. Basically, as long as you're vibing with the whole silver and red look, there's no reason to swap it to anything else. Number 2, Franklin's 500 Grand, Grand Theft Auto 5. If you're somehow not across it, GTA 5 has 3 primary protagonists. 2 of the guys are at least retired bank robbers, but the other, Franklin, is an up-and-coming kid with big dreams and a story based around being strapped for cash. So it doesn't make a ton of sense for him to have $500,000 in his pocket. To call this one game-breaking is admittedly pretty strong, but it does sort of destroy the narrative when the whole story is about him being hard up for cash, and you just know he could just wander into any car dealership he wanted and walk out with the ride of his dreams. Without the backbone of trying to make cash underpinning the narrative and Franklin's backstory, a lot of things don't really shake out. There's a very good chance you don't care about this because, hey, your pre-order got you a bunch of free in-game dollars. But it's worth pointing out if you're one of the 12 people who were playing GTA 5 primarily for the story. Number 1, BFG 9000, Rage 2. With a name like BFG 9000, you'd expect the gun to be just a little game-breaking, and not to worry, it definitely is. The deluxe edition for Rage 2 comes packed with neat tidbits to make life way easier for you and way harder for anything on the wrong side of your weapon. The BFG is exclusive to the fancy versions of the game, and while ammo for it is an expensive pain in the butt, this thing can finish off a boss in one shot. Maybe two if they've got armor. It should come as absolutely no surprise that the infamous BFG is game-breakingly OP. I mean, the thing fires explosive laser balls, for God's sake. If this isn't the be-all and end-all weapon to steamroll your way through a game, I don't know what is. That's the end of our list, but do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other special edition or pre-order bonuses that you reckon broke games. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like it, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.